And away we go. Okay, so this year presents a very unique challenge. And those of you who are listening to the classes that I've been giving on what's going on with Corona, with the times we live in, with things that we should be thinking, which, by the way, I do recommend everyone on Thursday evening, this coming Thursday evening, and next Sunday. This Thursday evening is Wednesday evening. Rabbi Reich is giving a class on Kasher in the House. Thursday evening is a class on thoughts about the Seder, and I'm going to include very important ideas of how to deal emotionally and in reality, how to deal with the challenge of what this year Pesach presents us. And for many of the people, I'm looking around, I'm seeing many of the people that are not able to do their normal Pesach. There are people that come to me every Pesach. They're not going to be able to do the normal Pesach. There are people that have their family every Pesach. Look, for me, this is going to be absolutely abnormal Pesach. My table is always full. It's with abounding with people on Pesach. And this year it is going to be perhaps just my son and his family, and perhaps not even them, because they just tightened all the rules last night. And I fear that they're going to tighten them again before Pesach. And it could very well be that every single one of us is going to have to do a Pesach Seder. We're going to be couples and singles. That's the way it's going to be. And tonight, what I want to do is, tonight is very, very practical. Tonight is to run through the Seder, to go through the pieces that you're going to need. Because again, many of you have gone to other people's Sedarim, or you've been together with so many people that you don't really pay attention to what's going on, and the whole aura of the evening carries itself. And and now we're faced with the prospect of actually sitting down with our spouse or sitting down by ourselves and making something meaningful out of this. So in order to do that, there are two steps that have to take place. The first step is that we have to learn just the rudimentary things, basic things about how to run a Seder, and then to get.
What did they hear us?
Everybody should please mute yourselves. I will mute everyone, but everybody should do that also. If you have something to say, and please make a comment, a question in the middle of the class, all you got to do is just unmute yourself. So again, that we first have to know the basics of how to run a Seder. So tonight I'm going to go through how to run a Seder. I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible, but as understandable as possible. I suggest that you take notes. Okay, and that's why I suggested also you have a Haggadah in front of you. For those that are just coming in now, I suggest you have a Haggadah, because I'm going to be running through from beginning to end. I'm going to talk about the things you need to prepare, the things that need to be on your table, the way to conduct and to run a Seder, and interspersed in all of that are going to be little bite-sized ideas, tiny bite-sized ideas, but things that you can explore further. I will also stop and tell you, go to the internet, type in this word, and get more information on it. And this way you have things to share at your Seder. For those of you that are going to be couples, there's going to be husband and wife. What an incredibly beautiful opportunity to actually experience the Seder with your wife, or with your wife and your kids, your immediate family that's going to be there. What an incredible opportunity to be able to share the Seder together. The Seder has to be seen. This is the way you have to approach your Seder. Even if you are a single and you are going to be alone for the Seder is a learning experience. That's what it's meant to be. Because we have big crowds and we have big families and we have all the shtick and stuff that goes on at the Seder is usually not, the only thing we learn at the Seder is who can't stand Sedarim. That's usually the piece of information that we walk away with from the Seder. Who's not really happy in their Judaism, right? But we don't really get the full learning experience of the Seder very often. But here, when we're just sitting and we're talking and we're conversing, we're thinking, we're asking questions aloud, we're saying, every year when we say that paragraph, I wish that we would, I don't even know what this paragraph is doing in the Haggadah. Imagine you have the chance at that point to take out a Haggadah with a commentary and to do a little research. Now, you can't use Google at your Seder. The Google is the fifth son, the one that doesn't show up to the Seder. Okay, you can't use Google, but you can use Haggadah. You can use other books at your fingertips, and that's what you should do at the Seder. Meaning, it doesn't all have to be prepared beforehand. It's a small Seder this year. It's intimate. Just sit and use the time to think at this. It's like study. It's like learning, and it's a conversation in learning. I'm looking forward to the Seder, even though my SEDERim, as those of you know, they go till 3:00 in the morning, and they are learning experiences. But I'm looking at the opportunity to actually just talk to few people, to have a few people at my Seder, and to just be able to really delve deep into the thoughts and the feelings that are supposed to be coming up at the Seder. Another important thing to know as we approach the Seder. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to have Haggadahs. In America, you still get stuff online. You can still get stuff sent to you. You should have, now you have a week before the Seder. You should have everybody should have a Haggadah, and you should have Haggadahs with commentaries. The Art Scroll Haggadah has the most basic, simple commentary in it, but there are hundreds of Haggadahs with all different kinds of anthologies of commentaries. And that's the kind of thing that you want to have at your Pesach Seder, because it will answer questions for you. If you have a basic question on the Haggadah, it will be in one of those Haggadahs. And you should have those Haggadahs and have them handy at the Seder. The Seder, you have to switch your mindset from the Seder being a show. The Seder is now a learning experience. That's what the Seder is. And what are we trying to learn at the Seder? What we're trying to learn at the Seder is we're trying to come to an understanding and an appreciation and a feeling for the fact that 3,300 years ago, the Jewish nation was born. On this night, the night that we sit down at our Seder, that is the night of the birth of the Jewish people. And we, every year, come to our Pesach Seder to affirm our membership. We are renewing our dues in the Jewish people by saying, Avodim hayinu l'farav Mitzrayim, that we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God took us out of Egypt. That is an affirmation that we belong to this nation. Yep, I'm checking in. God, I'm paying my dues. I'm paying my membership fees. I am part of this nation. And every year we connect ourselves, we click ourselves back into the nation. Now, I have to tell you, you could all go home now. What I mean is that thought alone is an incredible thought to share at your SEDERim, even if the Seder is you. Because just to remind yourself that what am I doing at this Seder? What's the whole purpose of tonight? Celebrating the fact that God took us out of Egypt. Why do I need to celebrate the fact that God took us out of Egypt? Because that's the way I pay my membership. That's the way I renew my connection to the Jewish people. Okay. Now let's get stuck into things that we need to do. First of all, you need to know that the main mitzvos of the night are Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, telling over the story of the Exodus of Egypt. And the purpose of telling over the story of the Exodus of Egypt is to inspire ourselves and to make ourselves understand, A, how much God loves us. We need that reminder this year more than anything. In the midst of all of this, amidst of the coronavirus, and for many, the coronavirus is a terrible thing, and it's causing a lot of things in the house. But in our Jewish world, what is happening now, the amount of funerals that are taking place, and in the religious Jewish world, when I look in the religious newspapers, I'm looking at people that I know, not necessarily people that I'm close with, but people that I know, well-known names in the Jewish community. Funeral after funeral after funeral. It is a magefa, it is a plague, akin to one of the 10 plagues. It is a plague that is happening on this world. It is striking close to home now, and that's why it's getting a bit of a different view, but it is a plague. And at this time, we need to remember, we have no idea why this is happening to us. The one thing we do know is that God loves us, and that even in the midst of all of the suffering of Egypt, That's the one thing that we kept with us, that we held on to. And just like in Egypt, they held on to that, we have to hold on to that also. Okay, and that is one of the purposes of telling over the story of the Exodus of Egypt. The other is experiencing all of these messages. And how do we experience these messages? We experience them by eating matzah and maror. Now, I'm going to talk more on Thursday night. And again, I invite everybody back Thursday night, because Thursday night will be a very important class of the emotional way to approach this Seder and how to deal with, again, our own emotional anxieties of being alone. But one of the other important things is that I know that people are tempted to, let's use paper plates this year. And I got nothing against paper plates, but, let's use paper plates and I can wear my pajamas to the Seder. Whoa, this is so geschmack. No, it's not. The Seder, wearing beautiful clothing and dressing your table up in a beautiful kind of way, that is more about God than it is about the guests that come to the house. And again, I'm going to talk much more about this on Thursday night, but it's important to know that if you want your Seder to be beautiful, you want to get something from your Seder. Again, you're an individual, you're alone, you're going to be alone for the Seder, but you want to walk away from the Seder saying, wow, that was actually enjoyable. All the trappings need to be there. The table needs to be set beautifully. All the beautiful things need to come out as they would normally come out. The haggadahs have to come out, and the beautiful things on the table have to come out. All the trappings, the clothing, we have to dress the way that we normally dress, because all of that goes into creating the aura, even for ourselves, of that this is about us and God, and that God is here at our Seder. That's another important thing to know. You're not sitting alone. We do not have that word alone. We are never alone, because ultimately we are always there with God. And that when we're sitting there alone, so to speak, our own selves at a Seder, first of all, you and millions of other Jews are doing exactly the same thing. And in that, there is no aloneness. And in every single Jewish person's Seder, and in every single person's heart, God is there also. God is with you in your Seder, and that you have to realize. Therefore, the way I eat my matzah, the way I drink my wine, the way I conduct my Seder is critical, because it's me and my partner, God, celebrating this Pesach. Okay, let's get rocking. The things that you need to have on your Seder table before the Seder begins. So one is you need to have 3 unbroken whole matzahs. The matzahs have to be shmura matzah, without going into the details of why it has to be shmura matzah, but the matzah for the mitzvah of eating matzah has to be shmura matzah. Now, 3 matzahs this year actually might do it if you're alone or with one other person. But the truth is that the shmura matzah, the matzahs that sit on either under the Seder plate or next to the Seder plate, those matzahs are really symbolic. And what do I mean by symbolic? Because you need to eat, as we're going to learn later, you're going to need to eat a lot of matzah to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah. When the Torah tells us to eat matzah, the Torah means a certain size has to be eaten. And if that's the case, so then what you have in 3 matzahs, in the 3 matzahs is not going to make it for a couple of people for the 3 times that we need to eat matzah. So we use those matzahs to break off a small piece from those matzahs to give to all the participants, and then we are mashlim, we add other matzahs in order to be able to make the size that we need. And I'll talk about that more later. Nevertheless, the matzahs, because we're going to be making a bracha on them, they need to be whole matzahs. We inspect our matzahs when we buy them every year when we get our matzah delivery. So usually my kids do this, that they go through the matzahs. We make 2 piles, broken matzahs. That pile is usually that tall, and then we give unbroken matzahs, usually that tall. So we take the unbroken matzahs and we save the unbroken matzahs. Now, Noel, you got to give me back my screen. Okay. Excuse me 1 second. Let me just see if I can fix this. Okay, there we go. Stole it back. Okay, now the you have to have unbroken matzahs, because when you make a bracha, just like the chalos on Shabbos have to be whole, so the matzahs have to be whole also. Okay, beautiful. So you have the 3 unbroken matzahs. This is a good thing to talk about at the Seder. And again, like I told you, as we go through, I'm going to point out things. I'm not going to give you the full blush. Otherwise, you'll be here till 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to give you the full blush of the reasons behind everything, but I'm going to point out to you things that you should be looking at so you can ask these questions at your Seder. Why 3 matzahs? So there's a couple of obvious 3s that come to mind, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, which is very important. Because if you look, by the way, 3 matzahs, how many cups of wine? 4 cups of wine. Why are the 3 matzahs 4 cups of wine? Because the 3 matzahs remind us of the avos, the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the 4 cups of wine remind us of the mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And there we have, sitting in front of us on the Seder plate, on the Seder table, we have our fathers and our mothers, and now we're not alone. We're there with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we're there with Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. We're there with 3,500 years of Jewish history, 5,000 years of Jewish history. We're there sitting with our paradigms, with our examples, with the ones that show us how to live as Jews, and all of that is sitting right in front of us. Okay, remember also, as I'm giving you these things, I'm not going to point out, this is a good idea. Take these ideas and run with these ideas. The 3 and the 4 sitting in front of us, that's a great idea to run with. There are many other reasons of why we have 3 matzos and why we break the middle matzah. If the middle matzah represents, let's say, Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, why are we breaking the Levi matzah? Why are we breaking the middle matzah? These are answers that are easily available, but that are great things to explain at the Seder. Okay, next thing you need wine or grape juice and wine glasses for all the participants. On Shabbos, you need 1 cup, and then you pour from that cup to everybody's cup. You cannot do that on Pesach. On Pesach, everybody has an obligation to drink 4 cups of wine, and therefore in front of every participant, there has to be a cup of wine that holds a minimum of 3.3 fluid ounces. Now, if you have a cup that holds 27 ounces, you're going to have a happy Seder. But that's, you don't need a cup that big. You need a cup that holds a minimum of 3.3. Usually they don't sell those in the store, right? 3.3 fluid ounces, but you can get 5-ounce cups. You can get smaller cups, because you need to drink a majority of the cup, which again I'll talk about when we get to Kiddush. But you need to drink a majority of the cup, and therefore drinking a majority. If you're drinking wine, a smaller cup is going to be better. We'll talk a little bit later about wine versus grape juice, but whichever it's going to be, so then it's 3.3 fluid ounces. Okay, it is important, I think I need to say it, don't use non-kosher wine at the Seder. It sort of defeats the purpose of all the messages that we're trying to give at the Pesach Seder, even though, not everyone is always so careful with using kosher or non-kosher wine. By the Pesach Seder, one has to be particularly careful that the wine is a kosher wine. Okay, salt water. Salt water, the recipe for salt water, so go look that up online. But the salt water reminds us of the tears of the Jewish slaves. The salt water is not put on the Seder plate, but it's put on the Seder table. Okay, and Elijah's cup should be on the Seder table. We fill it up. Our custom is to fill it up by the 4th cup of wine, but nevertheless, it sits on the Seder table for the duration of the Seder. One should have a pillow for leaning. Now, we know that one of the mitzvos of the Seder is what's called haseba, that there are certain things that we do during the Seder to generate inside of ourselves a sense of freedom. And one of those things is leaning. Now, leaning, this is not leaning, right? Drinking your 4 cups of wine, that's called having a neck problem. That's not called leaning. Leaning is when you actually lean, and those of you that have been to my Seder know that this is the way we do it, and that's why you need a pillow, so that you can lean comfortably and fully, and that's the way we drink the wine, that's the way we eat the matzah, and that is, if you look at Stephen Wexler, that is the way we lean at the Pesach Seder. Okay.
Rabbi,
yes.
I thought you're supposed to lean to your left side, right? So So the way you were leaning, you were putting your back against the left side. So I don't know. I've seen people with their side like sitting horizontally on the chair, leaning with their left side against the back of the chair. Does that matter?
That does not matter.
No. Okay.
It's leaning to the left.
Okay.
Okay. The reason we lean to the left is because the other way could be dangerous for for swallowing. Okay. Then so again we have a pillow. And that should be prepared before Pesach. They sell these nice pillowcases, beautiful pillowcases for the Seder, but you could do it without the pillowcase. It's fine. Okay. Other things that need to be prepared before we get on to so let's get on to the Seder plate. Okay, on the Seder plate. Now, I know that there are people that are stressing about this part of the Seder, about how to set up a Seder plate, especially people that have always been guests at other people's houses, have no idea how to set up a Seder plate. I'm going to give you very simple instructions. First of all, the items that need to be on the Seder plate. There are 6 items that need to be on the Seder plate. A beya, which is a roasted egg. Okay, so most people come to the Seder, they see a roasted egg sitting on the Seder plate. They have no idea how that got roasted. So I'll give you a little secret. It's a boiled egg that was roasted afterwards. You boil it up, hard-boiled egg, and then you take it in its shell, and you put it on the burner, and you leave it on the burner for a minute, and it is now, that is considered a roasted egg. Okay, we'll talk about why it's on the Seder plate in a second. The second thing on the Seder plate is the zeroa, which is the shank bone. Now, I was once working in Ralph's with the fish. A lady came by the counter and she said to me, where do I get a shank bone? So I said, it was before the kosher experience. So I said, there are no kosher shank bones. So she said, oh, no, that's okay. Says, I just need a shank bone. So I said to her, I'm not sure he's using non-kosher shank bone. So she looked at me and she said, but you need to have a shank bone on the Seder plate. Okay. No, you don't. The shank bone, if you happen to have a shank bone, which I'm not even sure what that is, but if you have to have, if you are blessed to have a kosher shank bone, have one on your Seder table. But what most people use for the shank bone is either the neck of the chicken or the wing of the chicken, and that is roasted, and that represents what the zeroa, what the shank bone has to represent. Okay, the next thing you need to have on the Seder table is the maror, which is the bitter herbs, and that is either romaine lettuce or horseradish that is grated, not the red horseradish or the white horseradish from a jar that's got vinegar and stuff in it. That's not called horseradish. I mean, the jar says it's horseradish, but that's not horseradish. Horseradish is horseradish, freshly grated ground horseradish. And if you do it close enough to the Seder, it will be an explosive experience. Okay. You do not have to use horseradish. You can use romaine lettuce. If you're using romaine lettuce, of course, it needs to be checked well for bugs, but nevertheless, you can use romaine lettuce. Okay, then you need karpas, which is a green leafy vegetable for the place in the Seder that we get the karpas, and which again, I'll explain in a few minutes. And that is for many people's custom, and my custom is celery. Other people have a custom of parsley, and there are people that have a custom of a radish, and those that have a custom of a potato. And the potato is usually the Russians and those from deep Eastern Europe. And the reason is because the closest thing to a green leafy vegetable in April in Russia was a potato. And therefore, that custom then became, it proliferated, and there are people that have that custom. Whatever your custom is, you should do. If you don't have a custom, use celery. Okay, charoset, which is, everybody's got a family recipe of charoset. Those that do not have a family recipe of charoset, I know you're surprised that I know a recipe for charoset, but it's basically apples. The way that my grandmother made it was apples, walnuts, the wine, ginger, and cinnamon. And it doesn't really matter what it tastes like, because you don't really use it at the Seder. we dip into the charosas. We're going to learn later. And I know that people that look at me, I can see you, right? People look at me like, what are you talking about? Whose Seder you been at, Rabbi? I'm telling you, you're going to learn tonight that we do not eat the charosas. We dip into the charosas. Now, if during the Seder, the second Seder, you want to eat your charosas, go for it. But only at the second Seder, and I'll explain why later. But if you want to go and eat your charosas, you can do that. But if you're using it just for the Seder, we do not eat charosas. We dip into charosas. Okay. Then on the Seder plate, you need to have also chazeres, which is also maror, because we eat maror twice. So we have a custom. On the one, we put romaine lettuce, and on the other, we put the grated horseradish. Okay, in my house, we try to put the head of the horseradish, to the top part of it. We cut that off. If it's got a couple sprouts or things on it, you can use either one. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's talk for a second about why these things are on the Seder plate. The beitza, the zroa, the maror, karpas, charosas, chazeres, 6 things on the Seder plate. It's really 5 things, maror is twice. Why are those 6 things on the Seder plate? The zroa is on the Seder plate because it reminds us of the Paschal lamb. The Paschal lamb was the essence of the Seder. Then it was the essence of the experience in Egypt. Then we have the egg. The reason why the egg is on the Seder plate, if I were to ask you, most of you would tell me the reason the egg is on the Seder plate because an egg reminds us of the cycle of life and blah, 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 and all that's great. It's wonderful. That's not the reason it's on the Seder plate. The reason it's on the Seder plate is because it is when you ate the Paschal lamb, which was the essence of the Pesach Seder, and will be the essence of the Pesach Seder when the temple is rebuilt. So when you ate the Paschal lamb, you ate it as dessert. That's why Pesach is my favorite holiday. Meat for dessert. How gishmak. So you ate the Pesach for dessert. What was the main meal? The main meal was not a salad. The main meal was more meat. And what was that meat called? That was a chagiga, a korban chagiga. It was a festival offering. That festival offering you ate, and then you ate the korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb. Really, there should be 2 pieces of meat on the Pesach Seder plate. One to remind us of the korban Pesach, one to remind us of the chagiga, of the main meal meat. But our rabbis were worried that people don't usually eat what's on the Seder plate. It's going to get tossed out. Why toss out good pieces of meat? Smart guys. And therefore, what they said was, put another cooked food on the Seder plate so that it will remind you of the chagiga, of the festival offering. That's the reason why it's on the Seder plate. Now, once we're using an egg, why an egg? Why not something else? Now you could go wild with all your symbolisms. But that's not the reason it's on the Seder plate. The reason it's on the Seder plate is because it reminds us of that second piece of meat. Okay, so I have, again, the zroa and the beya. I will tell you about placement in a moment. Then I have the maror to remind me of the bitter times, the karpas to remind me of the slavery and the hard work in Egypt, also of the fact that God took us out in the springtime. The karpas is a green leafy vegetable. It reminds us that spring is here and that God took us out in the springtime. We are not weathermen. Why do we care that God took us out in the springtime? The reason that we care is because that adds to the miracle, to God's love of the Jewish people, that he took us out at a time when it was comfortable for us. He didn't take us out in the winter. He didn't take us out in the summer. He took us out in a time when it was comfortable for us to walk. Then we have the charosas that reminds us of the bricks and the mortar that we had to build inside of Egypt. And then the chazeres, again, the maror that reminds us of the bitter times that we had in Egypt. Okay, there are many different customs of how to set this up on the Seder plate. By the way, if you don't have a Seder plate, you don't have to worry. Any plate that you take and you put these 6 things on the plate becomes a Seder plate. Wow, think of how much money you could save, right? You do not need to have one of those fancy Seder plates. I know they're good, but you don't need anything. You put this stuff on a plate, on a round plate, or a square plate, but you put them on the plate, and that is a Seder plate. Let's talk a little bit about the placement. there is a difference of opinion between the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserles, and the Arizal and others of how to set up the Seder plate. The reason why we need to have bitter herbs twice on the Seder plate is because we eat it twice at the Seder. And because we eat it twice at the Seder, and it serves really almost like two different functions, so then therefore we have two reminders of it at the Seder, on the Seder plate. I will show you the way that my family, following the Arizal, the way we set up the Seder plate. If you have a custom to the contrary, follow your custom. If you don't, then you can follow my custom, which is that imagine your Seder plate, you have a right and left top, and then a middle. So 2 eyes and a nose. Think of it that way, right? 1, 1, 1. Then you have right, left, and then bottom. Everybody can picture that? So you have dot, dot, center dot, then dot, dot, center dot. So the right side is the zroa, the shank bone. The left side is the beya, is the egg. And then in the middle is the maror. Then you have the charoses on the right side. Then you have the chazeres, the karpas, on the left side. And then that other maror thing, what we call the chazeres, you have that in the center. So it's zroa beya maror, charoses, karpas, chazeres. Clear? Right, I don't know, Trent, I see you showing it to me, but I don't know if that's the same.
So this is an Arizal Haggadah. So it may be flipped in the camera, but that's the shank bone on the right.
And correct.
The egg on the left.
Is the egg.
And then here are the two, here's the maror and the chazeres.
Right, it's flipped in the camera, that's why I wasn't sure. But, but that's correct.
In the camera,
and Martin also held up a picture, right? So you can if you can see those two pictures, so that gives you a good picture. Thank you, Trent. Thank you, Martin. Perfect. That gives you a good picture of the way that it's supposed to sit on the Seder plate. The salt water does not go on the Seder plate. The matzahs don't go on the Seder plate. In the Arizal's custom, matzahs don't go on. Many people have Seder plates where they can put the matzahs underneath the Seder plate. If you can't, then the matzahs sit in front of you. The Seder plate sits right behind them. Okay, beautiful. Other things that you need to know in preparation for the Seder. If you're going to be eating meat at the Seder, so then the meat should not be roasted. It should be cooked with, and the reason it's not roasted because that's the way that we made the Korban Pesach, and we're not allowed to redo the Korban Pesach. We can't eat the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, outside of the temple. So in order for it not to be considered roasted, so then we cook it with at least a 1/4 inch of water on the bottom, and that is not considered roasted. That could be eaten at the Pesach Seder. So you can have a roast, but it has to be roasted inside of a liquid. If we were using horseradish for maror, so then it should be grated before Pesach starts. Some have a custom to grate it right before the Seder. My father's custom was that way, but it's problematic, and it is difficult to know how to do it exactly according to the laws of Yom Tov, and therefore it's better to do that in the afternoon, late in the day, so that it retains some of its strength. I've never figured out exactly how to retain the strength of the maror. Some years it's good, some years it's not. The best is put it inside of some kind of glass thing with a cover on it. That I find usually helps, though not always. If you're using lettuce leaves for maror, we'll talk about how much leaves you have to eat later in the class, but that they should be checked to make sure that they are not harboring any kind of bugs. Okay, so the method of checking romaine lettuce, you have to separate the leaves, you have to soak them in water, and then you have to make a thorough leaf by leaf inspection. Any of the insects which are found have to be removed, obviously, and then and then you can use the leaves. The other method is you can use the stalks for maror instead of the leaves, and that is much easier to clean. Those really just need to be washed in a strong stream of water and rubbing the stalks as you rinse them, and that would be enough. Okay. Other things that need to be prepared. The karpas should be cut into small pieces because, as we're going to learn in a few minutes, you only need a small piece of karpas. And there's a reason why, we'll explain that in a minute. Charoses, okay, we talked about charoses. Seder plate. So we boil the egg, then we roast the egg that we use on the Seder plate. Okay, another important thing, if you have children at your Seder, children should rest during the day on Erev Pesach. It's not just like a thing, it's a thing. No, it's not just like it makes sense, but it's a thing that everybody should rest, especially this year when our participation at the Seder is critical. Every person's participation, because our Sedarim are going to be small, everybody is going to be an important person at the Seder. Therefore, none of this exhaustion that usually happens at the Seder, right? That 3 people are up and 7 people are sleeping, that's not going to work at this year's Pesach Seder because everybody's participation is going to be critical. And therefore, resting on Erev Pesach is part of the preparation of Pesach. Okay, and we talked about setting the table, and we talked about setting up the kara. Okay, beautiful. This year, because Yontif runs into Shabbos, correct? It's Yontif is Thursday, Friday, Shabbos for you Americans. We only keep one day Yontif here, and so Yontif, we don't have this problem, but you will have on Wednesday before Yontif begins. You have to remember to make an Eruv Tavshilin. Tonight's class, I don't have enough time to explain Eruv Tavshilin. A letter went out from the shul that detailed an Eruv Tavshilin. If you didn't get that letter, it had a whole bunch of Pesach preparation things in there. If you didn't get that letter, then call the office, send an email to Catherine, and get that letter, because in there it has all the details of an Eruv Tavshilin. Okay, let's get started on our Seder. Many people also have the custom of wearing a kittel. The man wears a kittel like he wears on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, right? The white robe. That's an optional custom, but again, a beautiful custom. Okay, and we're now ready. By the way, also an incredible thing this year, we are going to be able to start our Sedarim much earlier. And let me explain what that means. A Seder can never begin, and I'm glad you're all muted because I don't need the backlash, but Seder cannot begin before the stars come out. And there is a halachic reason for that. You can start Shabbos early. You can start other Yom Tovim early. You cannot start Pesach early if you want your Pesach to be accepted, real, so then it has to start once it gets dark out. That's why everything is so late, because the clocks have changed. Everything is late. This year, since there is no shul, we can daven at Seis, and we can sit down to a Seder about probably an hour at least earlier than we normally sit down to the Seder, because there's none of that after shul thing. I mean, people might want to just wait around their houses, like sort of, get the shul experience, so just pretend they're talking to people. But at the end of the day, there is none of that. And then, getting home, there's none of that. You cut out all that time, which means that Sedarim can start really at a much more decent hour. I'm not sure what time Tzeis is. Shabbos is over this week, I think around 7:30, somewhere around that. Is that correct? In San Diego? Somebody nod. Last week it was about 7:30, right? Yeah, so the Seder will start somewhere around that time, around 7:30. And again,
7:50, 8 o'clock.
Say it again?
7:50 probably.
7:50. Okay, fine, 7:50. But that means you could have Marv at 7:50, and by 8 o'clock you could be sitting at you could be starting the Seder, which is different than 8:45, 9 o'clock when you go to shul. Okay. Now we're ready to start the Seder. The first thing that we do at the Seder is we say the 15 things. Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. We sing it, we say it. And the reason that we do that is because these are the 15 steps and stages that a person has to take in order to be able to get to purity, to be able to get to holiness, to be able to get to God, to closeness to God. These are not just 15 things on a to-do list. Check, check, check. These are 15 steps and stages. And if I had hours, I would explain to you, like I do at my Seder, I would explain to you what each step is meant to do to us spiritually. Go look up online. H.com Shrager Simmons has a very beautiful article where he goes through the 15 steps at the Seder, and he talks about the spiritual things that we're trying to accomplish, not just the physical way to do it. Tonight I'm just talking about the physical way to do it, but he talks about the spiritual things that we're trying to accomplish at those 15 steps. Okay, Kiddush is now, we've said the 15 steps, and we start, just like when you put something into your GPS, so you press sometimes the top so that you can get the things, general how you're going, right? Oh, we're taking Highway 5 and we're going to make a left and a right, just so you get an understanding of where you're going to be. That's exactly what we're doing with this, where this is like the GPS, and we're telling ourselves this is where we're going tonight. This is where we're getting to. And where is it that we're getting? We're getting to Hallel, praising God, and Nirtza, the last two steps of the Seder. Nirtza is that God loves us and we love God. Okay, we'll talk about that a little more later. We're ready to make Kiddush. So things you need to know. That what is Kiddush? $1 million question, ladies and gentlemen. What is Kiddush? Kiddush, one of the most important things we do on Shabbos. One of the most important things we do at our Pesach Seder is to be Mekadesh. To be Mekadesh means to sanctify. Great, thank you very much, Rabbi. What is to sanctify? To sanctify means to set apart. We not only set apart Shabbos and Yontif with our actions, we set apart with our words. And when we say Kiddush, we are verbally sanctifying the day of Shabbos, the day of Pesach. While we're saying Kiddush, we should have in mind that what we're doing is, this is the first of the 4 cups of wine. This is the first of the 4 steps of connection that we make to God. This is the first of our mothers. It's the cup of Sarah. It's the cup of Sarah Imenu. This is our verbal sanctification. We're saying with our words that this is a holy day, a special day that God has given to us, and how lucky we are that God has given this us. Asher bach arbonu mikol ha'amim, you chose us from all the other nations, and you've given us this incredible moment to be able to celebrate and to recognize and to rejuvenate our connection to you. How lucky we are. This is what we should be thinking when we're making Kiddush. When you take the Kiddush, we take it up with 2 ends. We hold it inside of one hand. If you're a righty, you hold it in your right hand. Lefties hold it in their left hand. We try to hold the Kiddush cup in our palm, and the fingers surround the bottom of the cup. If you have a cup with a stem, what many people will do with a cup with a stem, because it's not so easy to hold it that way, is that we put the stem between our fingers so that we're holding the cup part itself. We're holding that with our hand. Why are the fingers surrounding the bottom of the cup? One of the explanations is that it's like the petals of a rose. The wine is like a flower, and the petals of a rose. The Jewish people are likened to a Shoshana ben Hamokim, to a rose amongst the thorns. For 2,000 years, for the past 2,000 years, we have been amongst thorns. All of our enemies have tried to peck at us, have tried to mar our beauty. But because we have remained strong and beautiful, because we have remained tied to our God and to our religion, we have been able to stay pure and beautiful. And that reminds us of a beautiful flower, that structure of holding the cup in the middle, like the center of the flower, and then the leaves around it, the petals around it, reminds us that we are like a flower, that for 3,000 years they've been trying to destroy us and trying to wipe us out, and we are still here. One of the important things in the middle of the Seder, we're going to say V'hi she'amda la'avoseinu v'lanu, V'hi she'amda, or one of the other songs that we throw in other tunes, but we're going to say V'hi she'amda. This is what has stood by us. One of the rabbis explained, what does it mean? This has stood by us over all the generations that they tried to destroy us. This cup of wine, kosher cup of wine. What's the difference between a kosher cup of wine and a non-kosher cup of wine? The wine was made by Jews. The wine was made by Jews, and there is a barrier between the Jews and the non-Jews. That barrier that exists between the Jews and the non-Jews has protected us and made sure that we have not assimilated into the nations of the world around us. And therefore, holding that cup, as we're standing at the beginning of the Seder, reminds us that, holy cow, after all these thousands of years and all of the terrible things that we've been through, we're still standing, and we're a beautiful flower. We're still this beautiful, pristine people that have not been, our beauty has not been marred. Okay, we have a custom when we fill the cup of wine. Many people have this custom of not filling your own cup of wine, but actually of filling somebody else's cup of wine. And the reason is because since we're B'nai Chorin, since we're free people at the Seder, we're trying to symbolize freedom. Therefore, a free person doesn't fill their own cup. a free person has people working for them. So we each work for each other. We pour each other's cup of wine. The wine should be a full cup. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. Many people, when they fill a cup of wine, first of all, they're afraid of spilling. Second of all, they're just, whatever. You pour it so that it doesn't spill. Not only does it need to be a full cup of wine, there needs to be a little meniscus. There needs to be a crown on top of the cup. This is part of the concept of a cup of wine. Now, if you ever wonder, do you really need to fill it up? So when a child asks for a cup of soda, and you give the child a half a cup of soda, what is the child going to say to you? Every child, everywhere, in every part of the world, what is a child going to say to you? Oh, yeah, I want a whole cup, right? Because a cup of soda is a cup of soda. It's not a half a cup of soda. If I wanted a half a cup, I would have asked you for half a cup. That's not a cup. A cup is a full cup. Plus, because this is a kosher bracha, it's a cup of blessing. A cup of blessing is overflowing. Our cup of blessing, we don't say to God, God doesn't look at us and go, okay, I'm going to bless you. Right up to there. Just a little bit. We don't want it to spill now. No, we want God's bracha to spill through our lives, to pour through our lives. And that cup of wine is a symbol of the blessing in our lives. And therefore, it is a full cup of wine. Okay, when we say the Kiddush, one person should say Kiddush for the whole table. But if everybody wants to say Kiddush also, that's fine. But one person says Kiddush. Everybody, you don't pour from your cup to the other cups on Pesach. On Pesach, everybody drinks their own cup, which is fine. But nevertheless, everybody's holding a full cup of wine. Everybody holds that cup of wine during the recitation of Kiddush, and then everybody drinks from that cup of wine. Okay, beautiful. When we sit down to drink the wine, we lean to the left. Again, symbolizing luxury and majesty. And we lean to the left, and we drink at least the majority of the cup. A whole cup is preferable. It is preferable to use wine. I see them. I don't want to run out of time. So some of these details, if you want details of how to use wine, if you don't like drinking wine, how to use wine and yet dilute it. So if you have 1/3 on a regular 12% wine, if you have 1/3 wine and 2/3 grape juice, or a third of wine, a third of water, and a third of grape juice, you can dilute it that way at that kind of proportion. It is better to use wine for the Seder, but if you're going to be drunk by the end of the Seder, or you're not going to make it through the whole Seder, so then it's better to use grape juice. If you have any kind of sulfite problems, any kind of health problems, any kind of other kind of issues, then of course you can use grape juice, provided that the grape juice says on the bottle that it's kosher for Daled Kosos. Kedem, of course, is fine. The tirosh, the stuff you get from Israel, that stuff is fine, but it's got to be stuff that can be used. The Welch's, which I don't know if they made this year, but the Welch's, which has in past years been OUP, also says on it that it's kosher to be used for the 4 cups of wine. Okay, we've made Kiddush. Everybody's drunken. I mean, you've drank the cup. And now we're ready for step number 2. Amazing how fast the Seder is going. We're going step number 2. Step number 2 is urchatz. Now, somebody said a joke the other day, and I'm sure anybody here who's been looking at the internet has seen this joke, but it's very, very funny, that the way this year's Seder is going to look, it's going to look Kadesh, urchatz, Karpas, urchatz, Yachatz, urchatz, Magid, urchatz, right? Because there's going to be washing after every single part of the Seder. Okay, that's cute. But that's not the reality. The reality is that, or it doesn't have to be the reality in most years, but the next step is urchatz, washing hands. This is not like washing hands for bread in the sense that the reason why we wash hands, and again, remember, I'm giving you just the top of the iceberg. The reason why we wash hands is because we are about to dip something in liquid. When you dip something in liquid, you eat it wet, so then your hands need to be washed because of the laws of purity and impurity. On Pesach night, even though we don't normally do this the rest of the year for a variety of reasons, or if we do it, nobody really notices that we do it. But on Pesach night, we do it, we're careful with it, because on Pesach night is the night where we are exalted, we're elevated, and we do things in an elevated kind of way. We wash our hands. There are 2 customs for washing hands. One is that the balabayas, the balabus, the one who's running the Seder, washes his hands. and nobody else at the Seder washes. In my house, it was always a custom that everybody washed. The kids would get a bowl with a glass, would bring it to the table, and everybody would wash at the table. As we got older, we instituted in the house that only I would wash my hands, and the reason was only because when you have 30, 40, 50 people at a Seder, it's a little unwieldy to get everybody up to wash. You add another 45 minutes on onto the Seder. So I felt if you can add another 45 minutes, let's talk rather than just wash our hands. So that wasn't an option. This year, again, because our starim are smaller, everybody can wash their hands. You can do it one of two ways. Either you bring a bowl and a glass to the table and everybody washes their hands at the table, or you get up and go into the sink. It is better, unless you have a custom otherwise, it is better for everyone to wash. So even those that have been to my Seder, who have only seen me wash, it is better for every participant, especially again when you have a small Seder, it's better for every participant to wash. Then we do not make a bracha on this washing. You don't make asher kiddushanim b'saz v'tzivanu. You just wash your hands. We try not to talk in between the washing and the eating of the karpas. Only because we want to connect the washing to the karpas. But if you talk, you don't have to rewash. We then take the karpas. The karpas. Look this up in Google. Why do we eat karpas at the Seder? I will give you two explanations. One explanation is because the karpas symbolizes green leafy vegetables we mentioned before, and it reminds us of the great miracle that God did for the Jewish people. It is also a symbol of slavery. It also reminds us, if you take the word karpas and you go backwards on the word karpas, so when we look backwards, we can recognize samach parech. 600,000 people, that's the samach. Parech worked hard. And we take that and we dip that into the tears. And it reminds us at the beginning of the Seder of the experience that we went through, of the difficulty of what we had gone through. It also reminds us of the dipping of the coat of Yosef. There are 2 times at the Pesach Seder that we dip, and the dipping is an important action because our minds have to be engaged when we dip. It's not this mindless thing of taking a piece of charog, piece of karpas, and sticking it in water. Our mind has to be engaged. Why are we dipping? Because Joseph's brothers dipped his coat in blood and told his father that he was dead. Why is that an important thing to remember? Because it's important to remember the beginning of the Jewish people. We started with machlokes. And the thing that has been plaguing us as a nation for 3,500 years has been machlokes. A fascinating custom that we're going to do at the end of at the beginning of the meal. Many people have a custom of taking an egg and of eating an egg in salt water. Forget about the egg on the Seder plate, but of eating an egg in salt water. In my house, we took the egg, we mashed the egg, poured the salt water in, and we had this egg soup. Now, the reason why we eat eggs at the Pesach Seder, eggs, not why we have them on the Seder plate, but why we eat eggs at the Seder plate, at the Seder table, is because an egg reminds us of the food of mourning. When a mourner, when he comes home from a funeral, he eats an egg. Why does he eat an egg? Because the cycle of life, all of those, it has no opening like a pistachio nut. There's no opening. It's that we have no opening. We have nothing to say. It reminds us of mourning. Why do we need to be reminded of mourning at the Pesach Seder? Because the Pesach Seder is happening on the exact same night that Tisha B'Av is going to happen. The way our calendar is structured is that this year Tisha B'Av is going to be on Wednesday night. And it always falls on the same night as the Pesach Seder. And the reminder, says the Rambam, is that we have to know that if we don't get the message now at Pesach, we're going to be sitting on the floor on Tisha B'Av. But if we get the message now on Pesach of brotherly love, we get the message now of caring for each other and worrying about each other, and not the message of the dip, the message of the hatred that existed between the brothers when they dipped Joseph's coat in the blood, if we could get that message now, we could avert having to sit on the floor in 6 months' time on the same night. Okay.
When is the proper time to eat the egg?
The proper time to eat the egg is at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. I will get there eventually, but it's at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. Okay,
also,
so we take the karpas. Another important thing about karpas, we take a small piece of karpas. Now I know that this is torture because you haven't eaten all day. There's not much you can eat in Pesach. You can't eat matzah. You can't eat any of the good stuff. And now comes the Pesach Seder. You can't eat cookies that have matzah meal in them. Okay, for another time. So really, there's very little you can eat. Salad, sorry, Charles, but that's about it. Now you come to the Seder, or you can have meat on Erev Pesach. So you can have meat. Yeah, no problem. So you then come to the Seder and you're hungry and they bring out the food, and you're looking, oh, okay, I don't really like salad, but at least I got a piece of salad. No, you don't. You get a small, tiny piece of karpas. You cannot fill your place with potatoes or with radish or with parsley or with celery. You have to take a small piece. There is a detailed halachic reason, but on a simple, very simple reason, very simple level, the reason is because when you take that, we're going to make a bracha, because you're eating a salad that's not part of a meal, so you have to make a separate bracha. The bracha that we make on it is borei pri adama. Later, when we get to maror, because when we get to maror, you are going to have to make you should, if we didn't eat the karpas now, you would have to make 2 brachas on the maror. You would have to make the bracha on the maror of the mitzvah of eating maror, but you would also have to make a bracha borei pri adama on the maror, because the maror is not part of the meal. So even though you've washed and even though you've made a motzi, by the time we eat the maror, but it's not part of the meal. Because it's not part of the meal, you have to make a separate bracha. We don't want to make 2 brachas on maror. We make 2 brachas on matzah, which we'll talk about. We don't want to make 2 brachas on maror. Maror is like a lower thing. We don't want to elevate it to the level of matzah. And therefore, we separate the bracha of the maror to the beginning of the Seder. When we eat the green leafy vegetable, when we eat the karpas, that's when we make the bracha on the maror. So we make a bracha, we have in mind that this is going to land also on the maror that we're going to eat later. This bracha is going to take care of the maror we're going to eat later, and we eat less than a kazayas. Because if we ate more than a kazayas, if we ate a large amount, we'd have to make an after blessing, and then we'd separate the 2. This way, we don't have to make an after blessing because we're only eating a small amount, and it stays connected to the maror. Okay. Kadesh, urchatz, karpas, now yachatz. Now we go and we break the middle matzah. The reason that we break the middle matzah is because we're starting the Seder with a symbol of lechem oni. This is the bread of affliction, the bread of the poor man. We're going to hold up the bread. We're going to hold up this bread in a minute, and we're going to say ha lachma anya. All right, we're going to remind ourselves this is the bread of affliction, and therefore we have to turn it into the bread of affliction at the beginning of the Seder. By the end of the Seder, the matzah is the matzah of freedom, but in the beginning of the Seder, it's the matzah of affliction. And therefore we break the middle matzah. It's also an important thing to know. A poor person, when they eat their food, they don't eat their food all at once. They break their food apart and they put a little bit of away later. And therefore, again, we're starting off the Seder as slaves, and therefore we're doing many symbolic things to get ourselves back to that place. And this is an important thing to point out. Why are we doing all these strange things? We don't usually start our meal by breaking the bread and not eating it, right? You break the bread and not eat it. So what's the matter with you? But we're doing all these strange things. Answer number 1. Okay, who wants to give it to me? Answer number 1 to the question of why are we doing all these strange things at the Pesach Seder. It doesn't make a difference what that strange thing is. Why are we doing strange things? Say it again.
So the children should ask.
So that the children will ask. That's the reason why we do them. And at this Pesach, for many of us, who are the children at the Seder? We are. We are. And every single one of us is a child. And that was not an insult, by the way. But every single one of us is a child, because every single one of us has a curious part to ourselves. Every single one of us has a part of us that is not yet fully educated. And therefore, that part of us, that's the part that we need to bring to the Seder. That's the part of wonder. That's the part with eyes open that we have to bring to the Seder. Okay, we break the middle matzah. There are 2 customs regarding what happens to the afikoman.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it correct to say that actually breaking the matzah is the custom of a free person? A slave can rely on his master to give him food, so he doesn't need to save food for later. But a free person that is self-reliant, he has to worry about his parnasa for another day. He breaks the matzah and he keeps the bigger one for later, because again he has to rely on his. We say we rely on God, but also we are participants in our own parnasa.
Right. So the way the rabbis explain it is that it's lechem oni, that it's really the beginning of the anius, of the poverty, and there's the beginning of the putting ourselves back into slavery. That's the general explanation. Okay, there are 2 customs regarding what's going to happen to the afikoman, and both of them are designed to increase the excitement and participation by children, and again, children of all ages. The first is that the leader puts it in a safe place, but the children go and look for it and then steal the afikoman, so to speak, and then later they ransom it for a present. This year it could be very, very difficult. If husbands and wives are doing this together, because when the children ask for things, it's usually not that expensive. When adults are asking, it could get very dangerous. The second alternative is that the leader hides it, where the children aren't looking and they search it later. Whichever way you do it, it doesn't make a difference. But that it should still be done. In other words, the custom of hiding the afikoman and of searching for it, there is an important symbolism in that. Many people, many modern people balk at the fact that we're teaching our children to steal. No, what we're doing is that we're reminding ourselves that we are hunting and waiting our entire lives to wait for that geula, to wait for that redemption. And that when we're looking for that matzah, which symbolizes redemption, we are looking for redemption. That we can't just live our lives without looking and hunting for that moment of redemption, for the moment that God is going to come back to the Jewish people. And that's what that whole little tekes, that whole little symbolism thing, that's what it reminds us of. Okay, now we're up to Magid. So when we hit Magid, you look at your art scroll Haggadahs, which I do not have, but it gives you instructions as far as taking away the Seder plate. We take away the Seder plate, and the reason we do that is we uncover the matzahs, we take away the Seder plate. I always make a big thing out of it. David, where are you going with the Seder plate? Get back here. Just so that we remember that the reason we take the Seder plate off, again, is to start to ask, to awaken our curiosity. The meal's about to begin, and you take away my food? What are you doing? So it reminds us of questions that we have to ask of what is going on in front of us. The whole purpose of the Seder is Magid. This is the essence of the Seder is Magid. It is not Shulchan Aruch. Sorry to break your bubble. But it is not the meal. That's not the essence of the Seder. The essence of the Seder is Magid, telling over the story of the Exodus of Egypt, and telling it over the way that it appears in the Haggadah. Very, very quickly. And this I could give 10 classes on, but very quickly. I'm going to put it down here somewhere. I just want to. Sorry, just give me 1 second. The structure of the Seder okay, I'll move stuff around. All right, I'm going to do, 1 second, here we go. Okay, structure of the Seder. We're gonna fly through Magid now because I could go paragraph by paragraph, but again, we're gonna be here for hours. The Magid, the basic thing of Magid is it starts with Halach Ma'anyu, which puts us back into the place. Again, I'm giving you brief things now. So if you're taking notes, this is an important place to take notes and go do more research on this. The Halach Ma'anyu, which is in Aramaic, speaks to every single person. And it puts us back, it transports us back 3,500 years back into Mitzrayim, back into Egypt. Then we have the Manishtana, the questions, which set up the whole night. It's about questions and answers, because that's the best way that people learn. Then we talk about Avodah Mayinu, that we were slaves to Paro. This whole section of Magid is how and when we have to recall the Exodus of Egypt. The next paragraph is Maisa, the story of the all-nighter of Pesach. Then the Omer Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the interpretation about when to tell over the Exodus story, and then the 4 sons, which is how to tell the story to each different part of our personality, and then Yachol, which is the paragraph that deals with when to tell the story, which month we tell the story. Then we have the origins of the nations and the roots of slavery. That's the paragraph of Mitchila, from the very beginning of our nation. Baruch Shomer Avtechaso, blessed is God who keeps his promise. Then Vihi She'amda, where we lift up the cup of wine and we cover over the matzahs and we say Vihi She'amda Lavaseinu V'lanu, this is what has stood for us and our forefathers. If God's promise to the Jewish people that even though in every generation they stand up against us to destroy us, we will never be wiped out. And then say Ulmad, go out and learn what our forefather tried to do to us. That brings us to the 4 verses that are the body of the Haggadah, Arami Oviravi, and I realize that I'm doing this quickly and I'm not giving you page numbers. So some of you are having a little bit of a hard time to follow, but nevertheless, you can go back and try to find all these things. This, by the way, is going to be is taped, and it will be available if anybody wants to go over it. Arami Oved Avi, which is the four verses of the Exodus and their explanations. Then you have Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Eliezer, which is those paragraphs, the greatness of the miracle. Those deal with the body of the Exodus. So we've dealt with 3 sections of Magid: how and when we have to recall the Exodus of Egypt, the origins of the nation and the roots of slavery, and then the body of the Exodus. And then we get to thank you, Hashem. We get to the thank you part of the Seder, which is Dayenu. Then we take a stop for a second. And we say that, first of all, we have to remember we have to remember exactly what we are saying thank you about. Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. And then after we say Pesach, Matzah, and Maror, Rabbi Gamliel says that whoever hasn't said these 3 things has not fulfilled their obligation at the Seder. Then we say those 3 things, and now we're ready for Hallel. We begin Hallel. We say the first 2 paragraphs of Hallel, which is the Hallel that deals specifically with Mitzrayim, thank you, God. And then we make a blessing on redemption, a blessing on the Haggadah. And then at that point, we drink the 2nd cup of wine. And Halavai, you're thinking that my Seder should go that fast. Okay, we are now up to the 2nd cup of wine. When you drink the 2nd cup of wine, you must have in mind that you are drinking the 2nd cup of redemption. You're drinking the cup. We know that when God talked about redemption of the Jewish people, he talked about it in 4 different languages. That's why we drink 4 different cups of wine. I will take you out. I will deliver you. I will bring you from Egypt. The 4 languages of redemption. Each cup elevates us and brings us closer to redemption, closer to God. This is the cup of Rivka. This is Rebecca's cup of wine. And it would be a good idea, before you drink the cup of wine, is to talk about who Rebecca was, what she represented. What kind of person was she? And therefore, what kind of midah, what kind of attribute do I want to inculcate in my life and to put into my existence? Another beautiful thing to look up and to get a little more awareness and understanding of who Rebecca was. You know, there are people that complain that women aren't mentioned at the Seder. That's ridiculous. The women form the entire basis of the Seder. The entire basis of the Seder is the number 4. 4 cups of wine, the 4 sons. We do things in 4s because Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. Okay, beautiful. Now, we drink the cup of wine and we lean when we drink the cup of wine. Now let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen next. Now comes the experiential part of the Seder. Now we take all the ideas that we talked about and we experience them, we think about them. When we eat the matzah, we think about slavery and freedom. When we eat the maror, we think about the slavery. When we eat the sandwich together, we think about the slavery and the freedom, because this is the way they did it in the temple. Another thought that we have when we eat the sandwich is that we're thinking about that the temple has been destroyed. And the way they really used to eat matzah and maror, they didn't eat it separately at the Seder. In the temple times, the way they ate it was they took the paschal lamb and they put it inside of matzah and they ate it along with maror and they ate the whole geschäft together. And that's why we separate it first. We eat matzah separately because we don't have a temple. We eat maror separately because we don't have a temple. Then we put them together. Zeicher lemikdash lehillel, we say. This is a remembrance of Hillel and the way that he used to do it in the temple. He would wrap it all together and he would eat it. And it reminds us that in all of our joy and all of our happiness, nothing is complete without the temple, without the ultimate geula. And it is similar to breaking a glass under a chuppah. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but how many people, A, knew that, and how many people, B, thought of that when they were eating their korech? It's a beautiful thing to stop and remind the few participants at the Pesach Seder. There's enough time to do this. It's just a couple of people. And to remind us, the reason we're eating this, the reason we're eating the sandwich is to remind us that life is not complete because we don't have the real way to eat the Korban Pesach because the temple is not around. Okay. Little technical thing that you have to know. Remember, I talked about the matzahs, that you don't really have enough matzah to eat the amount of matzah that you have to eat out of the matzahs that are sitting in front of you. It would be enough for one person, really, because you need to eat about a third of a shmur matzah, those round shmur matzahs. You need to eat about a third of a shmur matzah for motzi matzah, about a quarter of a shmur matzah for korech, for the sandwich, and then a third of the matzah again by afikomen. Now, that's a lot of matzah, but you don't have that much in front of you. So what we do is we bring out, right at this point in the Seder, when we get ready to wash, we bring out other matzahs and we put them on the Seder plate, on the Seder table. So that when I make the motzi, I'm going to break matzahs. I'll take exactly how to do that in a second. I break the matzahs. I then put the matzahs on two plates, one from the top matzah, one from the middle matzah, and I then pass them around, and everybody takes a little broken piece from one, a little broken piece from the other, and then matzah from the table to make the required size. So this way you're eating from the motzi, from the matzah, and you have enough matzah in order to fulfill the mitzvah. This, by the way, is not some wogelernter strictness, some wogelernter craziness of eating a lot of matzah at the Seder. The reason why is when God tells us to eat has a size. Whenever it says to eat in the Torah, there's a size. And therefore, having a little taste of matzah is nothing more than having a little taste of matzah. It is not the mitzvah of eating matzah. The mitzvah of eating matzah is a certain size, and again with maror, and that's why we have to worry about the sizes that we eat. Okay, we wash our hands. Everybody has to wash. We do the regular hand washing, whatever your custom is. We do the regular hand washing. We make the regular bracha. Then we come back to the Seder table. It should be set and ready with matzah and maror on it, so that with the extra matzahs and maror, so that we can just perform the mitzvahs. Because we should not speak from the moment we wash our hands until after we finish eating the Hillel sandwich. If you need to talk after you've eaten the matzah about, could you pass me the maror, you could do that as part of the mitzvah. But to have a conversation, matzah is nice and fluffy this year, right? Any of that kind of stuff should not be taking place there, because that we're involved in this mitzvah now called matzah, maror, korech, and therefore it all has to be in one section. Okay, we wash our hands, we sit down at the table. The leader takes the matzahs, all three matzahs in his hand, and he makes a bracha. He says, he then sets down the bottom matzah, and he's got the top matzah and the broken middle matzah. Why doesn't he start with the top matzah and the broken middle matzah? Because you can't make a bracha of hamotzi on a broken piece of matzah. That's why we take three matzahs, so that we have two whole matzahs, and we have the broken matzah in between. If your matzahs are in a matzah cover that has separate tiers for each one of the matzahs, many people will take them out of those tiers and hold the matzahs together. Okay, then we put down the bottom matzah, and we now take the top two matzahs and we make the bracha asher kiddushanu b'mitzvayse v'tzivanu al achilas matzah. And we then break apart those two matzahs, and everybody takes a piece of the top matzah and a piece of the middle matzah, in addition to other matzah to make the required size, and then we fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah. We lean to the left. We try to eat the matzah in as short a time as possible, and that's why you see people looks like they're stuffing matzah into their face. It's because, again, eating not only has a size requirement, but a time requirement. We try to eat it as quickly as possible with no talking in between, leaning to the left, closing our eyes and thinking that this is both the bread of affliction and the bread of freedom, that it's through this adherence to these kinds of mitzvahs that we elevate ourselves and that we draw ourselves closer to God. Okay, now we finish the matzah. We are ready for maror. The bitter herbs reminds us of the bitter experience that we had in Mitzrayim. Bitter herbs, you can use romaine lettuce. If you're using romaine lettuce, not the stalks, it has to be the size of about 7 by 6 1/4, which means basically 3 good-sized leaves. Or if you're eating stalks, which are more intense, so 3 or 4 3 stalks really is enough. You eat that, and that is sufficient. That is maror. We take the maror, we dip it into charoses. Why do we dip it into charoses? Because we remember that the hard times that we had in Egypt were with the building of the bricks. So we dip it in. You don't want to take away the taste of the maror. And that's why we only dip it. We don't take it and dunk it on the top of the maror, so that we're really eating charoses and we're not eating maror. We're eating maror with a little bit. The Gemara says that the reason is really that it takes away the bugs. There were bugs inside of the maror, whatever, and if a person were to eat that, it could be dangerous to them, and therefore, even if you got rid of them, it was bad effects on a person, and therefore the charoses would sort of balance that out. But it was just a little bit. That's all. If you're using horseradish, 1.1 fluid ounces. Let me say that one more time. 1.1 fluid ounces of horseradish. By the way, if your horseradish is from a jar, like I mentioned before, it's no good because it's got vinegar in it. That's not horseradish. Or it's got beets in it. That's not horseradish. Horseradish is horseradish, grated horseradish. It's what would fit inside of a shot glass. That's the amount of maror that you have to eat. What many people do is they take a little bit of the grated stuff, they mix it in with the leaves of the romaine. That's also fine. Or you can eat 1.1 fluid ounces of it. It was amazing to me that my father and my uncle, every single year, had this image that they would eat the maror and then they would spit and spew and would cough and it would turn red. And then when they would finish, they would have to knock it down like this and they would finish the two of them looking and go, that was good. I just couldn't understand how the word good could be associated with that episode of the two of them. They would dance around the house, spitting and spitting like they're trying to swallow the stuff. It was so terrible. But that's called good because that gives us the experience. It reminds us. Now, romaine lettuce, not that bitter. Even if you don't like lettuce, still not that bitter. Nevertheless, it is considered, by the Talmud, is considered a bitter herb because it really does have a bitterness to it. And therefore, it accomplishes the same thing. Beautiful. Now, we eat the maror, we make a bracha of Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu al achilas maror. And then we eat the maror. We do not lean, because it's not a symbol of freedom, it's a symbol of slavery. So we don't lean when we eat the maror. We then take the matzah and the maror. So we take the bottom matzah, and every person receives a small piece of the bottom matzah, then adds other matzahs at the table to come to that right size of approximately a third of a round matzah, and then takes the same amount of maror, dipped in charoses, and then we read the paragraph about how Hillel would combine it with the slices of the Passover sacrifice and eat all three of them together. We eat the sandwich while reclining. There are some customs that say we don't recline when we eat the sandwich, but unless you have a custom to the contrary, we recline when we eat the sandwich. Again, reclining to the left. Reclining is not just leaning your head over. Reclining is we recline to the left, right? Again, a little more like this. We lean to the left. We eat the Hill sandwich. At this point, we have completed the mitzvahs, the eating mitzvahs. There's one more mitzvah that we have, one more eating mitzvah, and 2 more cups of wine. Then we eat Shulchan Aruch. Do you understand when I say every year that Shulchan Aruch is really not the crazy thing that we make it out? We make like 27 dishes and we go nuts at the Seder. Do you understand how much matzah you've just consumed? You will understand because the next morning it's going to be a battle, right? It's a lot of matzah. It's a lot of maror. So by the time you get to the meal is just part of the Seder. It's not the Seder. It's just another part. Okay. Meal begins with an egg. If you have such a custom, meal begins with an egg, a hard-boiled egg, and then you move on to the rest of the meal. During the meal, good time to talk about more Passover things that you weren't able to talk about during the Seder because you were trying to move it along, but it's good to talk about things. Let me just give you for a second a couple of things to focus on. 4 sons. You can find material on the 4 sons. You could spend your entire you could spend a 10-hour Seder on the 4 sons. What are they doing at the Pesach Seder? What do we have to learn from them? Why are the 4 verses of the main body of the Pesach Seder taken from the book of Deuteronomy? Not from the book of Exodus. You would imagine the verses that talk about the Exodus of Egypt, those are the ones you should use from the book of Exodus. We use the verses from Deuteronomy. Great thing to research. Very important message for the Pesach Seder. Dayenu. Really? If you would have taken me out of Egypt, but you wouldn't have given me the Torah, or you wouldn't have brought me into the land of Israel, that would have been, Dayenu would have been enough? No, it wouldn't have. What are you saying in Dayenu? You're lying. It's not true. Dayenu would have been enough. No, it wouldn't have been enough. So what does it would have been enough mean? What's the whole purpose of the Magid? Why is it different than what we have to do every day of the year? Every day of the year, I have an obligation to remember the Exodus of Egypt. Why is Pesach different? Pesach is a regular day of the year. What do I have to do different on Pesach? What am I supposed to be inspiring myself with on Pesach? Freedom, another great thing to talk about at the SEDER. What is freedom? I suggest you listen to my other class, which I gave on freedom. They get some good ideas. But what is freedom? That's Pesach. The whole thing is the festival of freedom. What are you free? Free from? Free to? What does that mean, freedom? Okay, these are great things to discuss, to talk about at the Pesach Seder. Are we free this year? We can't walk outside of our houses. Our kids can't come to us. Where we can't get on a plane. We can't go to our beloved Eretz Yisrael. We can't go to our shuls. We're free. What does freedom mean? Okay, great. Now, finish the meal. We are now, believe it or not, the Seder is not over. Now, I know that everybody, and I'm looking at some of you here, have complained to me that at their Seders, at this point, as soon as you finish the meal, everybody is gone. Everybody goes home. Well, guess what? This year, the only one to go home is you, and you are already home. So nobody is going home early. Nobody's leaving the Seder early. Now comes, as far as I'm concerned, the best part of the entire Seder. Now comes Tzafun, Barich, Halel, Nirza. 4 steps. Tzafun is the eating of the afikoman. The word tzafun means something that is hide, also tzipiyah, looking towards the future. It is the bread of redemption. It reminds us of redemption. We take the afikoman, we uncover the afikoman, we recover the afikoman, and we eat that piece, which very often when the kids are around, it's actually nothing more than just matzah meal at that point. But we then take the afikoman. We again, you have to eat a quarter of it. You have to eat a third of a matzah. So at this point, you have to break the matzah. I'm not sure I get my ratios right. It's a third for the mitzvah of motzi matzah, and it's a third for afikoman, and a quarter, which is smaller, a quarter for the hillel sandwich. I might have inverted that. I apologize. So it's a third, a quarter, and a third. Okay. So then we then take the more matzah on the table in order to be able to reach that size limit. I'm going to try to finish in the next 7 minutes. We then take that and we put that together, and we now eat the afikoman. Okay, and again, during eating afikoman, we're thinking about geula, we're thinking about redemption, we're thinking about that this should be our last Pesach here in the diaspora, and that next Pesach we should be eating the carbon Pesach, the Paschal lamb, and not just this piece of matzah at the end. This is the last thing that we eat. So if you want a cup of tea, well, you can have a cup of tea afterwards, but if you want to have macaroons, you want to have any kind of dessert, anything that should be eaten before the afikoman, we go to sleep with the taste of afikoman, with the taste of geula, of redemption in our lips. Okay, then we now pour the third cup of wine, the cup of wine of Rachel. We now are, we say Birchas Hamazon. If you don't have 3 people, we just say Birchas Hamazon. And when we finish Birchas Hamazon, finish grace after meals, finish benching, then we drink the 3rd cup of wine. We fill the 4th cup of wine and the cup of Elijah, and then we just 1 second. Here we go. Just opening up my Haggadah, just so that I can go through each of the pieces here. Okay, we then open up the door, and after the drinking of the 3rd cup of wine, again, we fill the 4th cup of wine, fill Elijah's cup, and then we talk about Elijah, we talk about God, we talk about redemption, We talk about how we have been oppressed by the nations and we're waiting for that day that God is going to come and to save us from the hands of the nations and from every oppression that we've had. Shvei Chamos Chalagon, we open up the door and we invite Leo and Navi in, means that we're inviting redemption into our homes and redemption into our lives. Then we say Hallel. We say the rest of the paragraphs of Hallel, joyously singing the Hallel. Because this is our way of saying thank you, God, not just for Egypt, but for everything that you've done. We then launch into the 26 verses of Hodu LaHashem Ki Tov Ki Le'olam Chazdo, of thank you, Hashem. Then we say Nishmas Kol Chai, which is the holiest of all prayers. I wait to be able to say this at the Seder, where we talk about how if we could only sing God's praises, we would never be able to say all the things we need to say about him, because he is so enormous and huge, and the things that he has done for us, the beauty and blessings that he gives and he puts in our lives, even under difficult circumstances, is so amazing. We then say the Yishtabach and the things that go before it on a regular Shabbos and Yontif. We then say that. We say this sitting down. You don't have to stand up for the Yishtabach. Then we say Ya Hallelujah. We say a blessing of praise of Hashem, and then actually we say Yalucha first, and then Yishtabach in our tradition, and then we drink the fourth cup of wine. Beautiful. Fourth cup of wine is the wine of Rachel. It is the completion, along with the cup of Elijah, the completion of the redemption process. And now we turn to God and we say, accept the beautiful offering that we've given you of our Pesach Seder. Chasal Sidur Pesach Kil Chasal. You know, if I had a better voice, what I would probably do is to make a tape. Maybe I will do this. To make a video and stick it up on YouTube, just of the songs that we sing at the Seder, which not everybody knows. Halach Ma'anya, this song, Chasal Sidur Pesach Kehil Chasai B'Kol Mishpatai V'Chugasai Kasher Zachinu L'Saderaisai Kei Nizkel L'Asaisai. And it's just as simple of a ditty. When you hear somebody else sing it, it's easy, but when you don't, it's sometimes a little more challenging. So maybe what I'll do, B'Li Neder, is maybe I'll get my son to help me mask my voice, and we'll sing some of the songs of the Pesach Seder. I think Dayenu everybody knows, but we'll sing some of the songs of the Pesach Seder that might also be a great help. Okay, then we say a bunch of paragraphs, a bunch of songs which talk about just praising Hashem. Then Kilo Noah, Kilo Yoah, the God is an Adim Melucha, he's awesome in his kingdom. Then Adir Hu, that God is again awesome and amazing. Who knows one, the basics and the fundamentals of faith, that we understand that this is what Judaism is based on, and then we complete the Seder with Chad Gadja. And I will leave you tonight with the most beautiful of thoughts. Chad Gadja, the Zabin Abba B'Chezuzeh, Chad Gadja. It's like this stupid little kid song, The House That Jack Built. It's like, what is that? This is the way you end the Pesach Seder? This is the way you end the most exhilarating, exalted night. The night where we remember we are God's people. We love God. God loves us. And you end it with a Chad Gadja. Look at it one more time. Chad Gadja. One kid. That's talking about the Jewish people. The Zabin Abba that our Tata bought. Our Tata in Himmel. Our Father in heaven. Betray Zuzeh with 2 coins, the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. Chad Gadja. We are his special people. And when every enemy has come across us, attack us, the Shunra, the Kalba, the Chutra, the Nura, the Maya, the Torah, the Shochet, the Malach HaMoves, in the end, we have nothing to worry about. Because Asa Kadosh Baruch Hu, because God comes along and he destroys the Malach HaMavis. And he gets rid of the Shochet. And he gets rid of the Torah, the axe. He gets rid of the water. He gets rid of the fire. He gets rid of the stick. He gets rid of every enemy of the Jewish people. and we declare in those final words, we are Chad Gadja. We are God's one beloved people. Chad Gadja, Chad Gadja. This year, maybe more than many years, that reminder that ultimately God is going to come and wipe death off the face of the earth, that God is going to heal us and that God is going to uplift us, is a message that we need to focus on and concentrate on as we say those last words of the SEDER. In my house, we make jokes and games here. We do a whole voice thing. It's cute, but it doesn't take away from the message that we are God's beloved people. Chad Gadja, the Zabin Abba, that he brought us with the 10 commandments. He brought us with the 2 tablets. We are Chad Gadja. And at that point, we then say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habenuya. Next year, we should celebrate our SEDERim in the rebuilt Jerusalem together in Yerushalayim HaKodesh, having our Pesach Seder in the temple, sitting around our Paschal lambs, Chad Gadja, as God's beloved people that he brings back home to him. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I know I did that fast, but I hope that I gave a little bit of food for thought. And let me make 3 commercials, if I may. There's still preparation that we need to do for Pesach. One of the preparations that we need to do for Pesach is that we need kasher the house, all that kind of stuff. Wednesday night, 7:30, Rabbi Reich in his Zoom room is giving that class. Thursday night, I'm talking to the heart. I'm not talking to the Seder. I'm not talking to the function. I'm talking to the heart on Thursday night of many of us have heavy hearts this Pesach, just dealing with the fact that Pesach is going to be a different Pesach. But I want to share some of the work that I'm doing in my own self. It's very personal. But some of the perspectives that we can have this Pesach to make this an incredibly gorgeous, moving, beautiful Pesach that we will remember as opposed to shudder when we think about it and as opposed to cringe when we reach it, but something that we can get to with great excitement. And that'll be Thursday night. Then next Sunday night, is the Pesach HaGadol Drasha. Usually I give the Shabbos HaGadol. I give a drasha on the Shabbos before Pesach. This year, that's impossible for many reasons, and therefore I will deliver that on Sunday night. Thoughts about Pesach, again, speaking to the heart of Pesach. One other commercial. Every morning at 7:30 in the morning, we gather together on Zoom, here in the same Zoom room, and we recite Tehillim together. It's not fancy, no shtick. We just recite Psalms, 5 Psalms a day. We will complete the book of Psalms in 30 days. It's just a chance to daven together. It's a chance to feel a little bit like you're davening with other people, that you're not just doing it alone. And I think it's a terrific thing. Sunday nights, we have a social hour where we just sit like this, we unmute ourselves, and we just schmooze, just talk. And it's been beautiful, fantastic. Just a chance to sit and schmooze. So every morning, 7:30 in the morning, is just a chance to daven. All you need is a book of Tehillim. We do say them in Hebrew. We don't translate them. If you have a translation, you can obviously look at the translation. You can read it in English too while we do it. But it's just, again, an opportunity for everybody to be able to daven together. And I do encourage everyone to join us. It grows each day. We have about 10 people that join us. I would like to see hundreds of people joining together to be able to daven. I know that God would love to see that too. So I do invite everyone to join us again, 7:30 in the morning, to come and to daven with us, come and recite Tehillim, come and recite Psalms with us. Okay, thank you all for coming. It was amazing. And for me, is just totally uplifting to be able to share this and to be able to share this with all of you. It's really, really amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
you.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
I'm going to Daven Shachris.
Thanks, Rabbi.
I'm going to Daven Shachris because the sun has finally come up. Okay.
Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Konntest du jetzt.